You getting pregnant at your age? It's just revolting. And let's not even talk about your educational background. It's like you're the subject of a documentary or something. Who drops out these days? Do you really think my being a high school dropout and an older mom affects you as my brother's wife, Ava? You're shameless, you know that? Can you just leave before I have to call security? I'm sure you don't want to ruin your darling brother's wedding. Ava, the bride, bursts into laughter as if she's won the argument. My brother Daniel, witnessing her intimidating demeanor, signals me silently to leave with a smile. Fed up with both of them, I finally say, "Fine, just don't regret this later." What? You're such a sore loser, you old hag. Don't think you can take those words back later. My name is Sophia. I'm 38 years old. Currently, I'm 6 months pregnant with my first child. Today is the wedding of my only brother Daniel. Ava, the new bride, has just thrown some unbelievable words my way and shoved me toward the door of the family waiting room. I did get married last year, at the age of 37, considered late by most standards. However, until then, I never had the time to focus on personal milestones like marriage or having a child. I have a brother Daniel who's exactly 10 years younger than me. When he was born, our father was 42, our mother was 35. During a time when societal bias against late pregnancies was much stronger. My mom always said, "We were both only children, so we wanted to give our kid a sibling." Dad passed away from injuries sustained in the accident when I was 17 and my brother was just 7. Mom also underwent multiple surgeries, but eventually 2 years later, she joined Dad. At the time of Dad's passing, I was a sophomore in an all-girls school with a ladder system. Financially, we were okay for a while, thanks to the insurance money, but my mom was hospitalized and couldn't take care of my brother. Even worse, family members, once warm and supportive, started eyeing the compensation money. One even told my bedridden mom, "You can't take care of your young kids. We'll become their guardians until they're adults." So I sold our family home and moved to a new apartment, relying more on non-family members to help us through this crisis. Ironically, they proved more helpful than my own flesh and blood. Having moved, I was free from the clutches of money-hungry relatives and focused on taking care of the home and Daniel. Between cleaning, cooking, and attending to my still very needy brother, not to mention frequent hospital visits to see Mom, my schooling took a backseat, and I eventually dropped out. Certainly, I had help from my teacher, classmates, and best friends, but as months turned into years, the burden grew heavier on me. So I decided to drop out of school during my sophomore year. "Sophia, do you really have to quit? Why not just take a break?" My best friend Emma tried to talk me out of it, but I didn't want to leave things hanging. I decided to make my little brother Daniel my top priority, at least until he starts middle school. Around that time, our mom, who had been struggling with treatment, finally passed away, joining Dad. For the next 5 years, life revolved around Daniel. Taking Emma's advice not to isolate myself at home, I continued learning while Daniel was at school, enrolling in language courses and other online certifications. When Daniel moved on to middle school, I became a certified public accountant. I started working through a temp agency. I continued to aim higher in my career, and by the age of 25, I got a job at the headquarters of a well-known restaurant chain. There were people from all walks of life, and they inspired me to work harder than ever. Despite the detours, I found a place where I could be myself, and all my efforts felt worth it. Eventually, I got married. On the other side, Daniel moved out for college and started living in a dorm. About 6 months ago, he texted me out of the blue. "Hey, I have someone I want you to meet. Can we catch up?" Of course, I had no reason to say no. That weekend, we met at a restaurant Daniel had picked, where he introduced me to a tall and beautiful woman. Her name is Ava. She was a graduate from Wellesley College with excellent grades. But something about Ava didn't sit right with me, especially her tone and perspective. For example, right after introductions, she bluntly said, "No offense, but how old are you? You look significantly older than Daniel." "I'm 38. There's a 10-year gap between us, so that might be noticeable," I replied. "So, you're almost 40 then? Wow, and you just got married. How old is your husband? Was it a marriage of convenience? I mean, if we get married and have kids, they'd probably call you grandma rather than aunt, right?" I was already suspicious of being pregnant and was planning to see a doctor next week, so her insensitive comments made me even more uncomfortable. Yet Daniel, standing right next to us, didn't seem bothered at all. It looked like my brother, who had always been focused on studies and work, was completely smitten with Ava. He was blindly approving of everything she did. That night, when I asked, "Hey, Daniel, you're dating Ava with the intention of marrying her, right?" "Yeah, that's the plan. Sophia has met her too, and I was thinking of visiting Ava's family to introduce myself next week." "Already? Didn't you say you've only been together for exactly 2 months?" "Is that so? Is there a problem?" "It's not necessarily a problem, but isn't it better to get to know each other a little more before making such a big move?" "Thanks for worrying, Sophia, but the bond between us doesn't depend on time. It's deep and solid," Daniel declared. I couldn't find the words to respond. Daniel officially proposed to Ava, and they were happily engaged. But then Daniel told me, "Look, Sophia, Ava's family has some opinions. So could you and your husband kindly not attend the engagement party?" "What do you mean by Ava's family's opinions?" I blurted out, and Ava, who seemed to have been eavesdropping, took the phone. "I heard from Daniel that you're pregnant, Sophia." "Yes, but my morning sickness isn't bad, so attending the engagement ceremony should be—" "But don't you think an old, pregnant woman would ruin the celebration?" She cut me off. "You should know your place. Pay for the engagement and stay out of it. You really don't have common sense, do you?" Stunned, I couldn't respond. Daniel rushed in. "Sophia, just transfer the money for the engagement to my account and don't cause a scene, all right?" Then he hung up. Soon after, I received a reminder text from Daniel. "When are you sending the money for the engagement, Sophia?" "Why should I pay for your engagement, Daniel? I raised you like a parent, but I am your sister, not your mom." Daniel explained that Ava's family owned several restaurants. Ava had grown up like a little princess, surrounded by other wealthy folks. Naturally, Ava is surrounded by many acquaintances, friends, and relatives who are also celebrities. And she says, "I can't match Sophia's level." That's what they say. He said I wasn't in their league and even hinted my lack of education was a problem for their marriage. "If I convinced them, you should just wish me happiness and keep your mouth shut," he said. Fed up, I thought, if that's the case, consider this my final contribution, and transferred the requested $100,000. On the wedding day, my husband and I visited the venue with mixed feelings. Ava greeted us with, "It's really gross that an old woman like you is pregnant. Leave before I call security." My husband started to say something, but I stopped him. Ava continued, "You two aren't even considered family. We should have told the staff to exclude you. Today's guests are only work associates, college, and high school friends." Ava laughed, and Daniel just smiled. No matter that it was a joyful occasion for my brother, I had no reason to put up with this level of insult. "Fine, I'll leave since I'm clearly not wanted here. And while I'm at it, consider any future interaction with you all permanently canceled. No regrets, okay?" As I said this, Ava laughed and retorted, "Why would we regret it? Are you lost in your fantasies or something?" Before her laughter even faded, Ava's father rushed over. "Ava, what are you doing, raising your voice like this? People can hear you from the other side." "Oh, Dad, meet Daniel's embarrassingly uneducated, incompetent sister-in-law. She had the nerve to try to attend the ceremony, so I just chased her away." As Ava laughed and said this, her father looked at me, his eyes widening halfway. "Ava, Do you know who this is? She runs the staffing agency that practically supplies all the staff for my restaurant. Hospitality staff? What's that? Ava's father then explained that hospitality staff refers to temporary workers employed during busy periods in hotels and restaurants. Their responsibilities range from preparations to serving food and drinks at appropriate times and cleaning up afterwards. Especially for Ava's father's restaurants and Japanese cuisine establishments within hotels, where banquets and receptions are held, my agency provides invaluable staff, trained in both manners and language skills. So what? I didn't know, okay? My apologies, Miss Sophia, CEO. It seems there's been a little misunderstanding. Misunderstanding? No, there's no misunderstanding. Ava calling me an uneducated old hag isn't a first. And you both agreed to not invite me to the engagement party, right? So you're just as judgmental as your daughter. Oh, well, that's... My husband, standing beside me, stepped forward and spoke. What's the rest of that sentence? Regardless, we'll both be withdrawing our businesses from any involvement with your company. The father's face turned ashen. Mr. Alexander, CEO, you're Miss Sophia's husband? My wife uses her maiden name in business, so you probably didn't notice. And it's not something we'd go around announcing. An angered Ava, overhearing this, shouted, Why are you humbling yourself before the husband of this old hag, Dad? We can always work with another company. The father explained that my husband owns the consulting firm he had approached. Ava was undeterred. So what? There are plenty of consultants out there. We should cut ties with these idiots. His face remained pale. As your daughter suggests, it seems like a win-win for both parties to go our separate ways. My husband took my hand and we started walking away, leaving behind a dazed father, a confused Daniel, and a furious Ava. The wedding proceeded without a hitch. But afterwards, a heated argument erupted between father and daughter, all because of Ava's attitude towards us. As it turned out, the father, a restaurateur, had been facing severe financial strains. The main bank had introduced him to Alexander, intending to hire him as a consultant to turn things around. But upon investigation, the father's financials were far worse than initially thought. So it's a good thing we didn't take on a potentially futile project, my husband later commented. But the bank was furious, withdrawing support and freezing loans. Rumors spread, leading to other financial institutions and suppliers doing the same, plunging the father into bankruptcy. So Ava's father set his sights on Daniel's apartment, aware that it was just a drop in the ocean. When I got married, I sold my family's apartment and settled the remaining insurance and compensation money from my parents. Daniel used his half as a down payment to buy a high-rise apartment. However, the apartment still had 30 years left on the mortgage, which would leave Daniel in considerable debt if sold. Thus, the relationship between Daniel, who resisted selling, and Ava, who pushed for it, rapidly deteriorated. In the end, it seems they agreed on a quick divorce, with Daniel paying some amount as a settlement. Daniel came into my office to tearfully explain the situation, but I was so disgusted that I asked him to leave immediately and banned him from returning. Of course, he is also banned from my apartment, and I've blocked all means of contact. Right now, I'm busy preparing for the birth of my child. Emma, Alexander's sister, and a friend since my student days, often visits and says, "My niece or nephew can't wait to meet the baby," as she talks to my growing belly. From now on, I plan to work even harder to make my own family happy.